Okay, good morning. Do you remember what we did yesterday? We started with the paradigms of Nicholas Henry. Okay, what were the paradigms? Can you tell me a sequence? Era of principles divided into three parts. Okay. Then, what was the duration? 50. 27 to 37, 37 to 47 to 50. Fine. Then third, paradigm 3. Paradigm 2 can also be called as era of orthodoxy. Okay, then crisis of identity is also one part. Pabad as intellectual wasteland. Okay, various metaphors were used. Okay, then third paradigm, Pabad as Paul science. What does it mean?
Means it was identified one and the same as Paul.
Again, the convergence. We start with the dichotomy. Again, the convergence of politics and administration. Paradigm 3, 1950 to 70. Okay, then fourth, years management, 1956 to 70. Okay, so 6 years difference is there. Okay, then paradigm 5. Public administration is public administration, almost acquiring the status of a discipline. 70 to 90. 1990 onwards it is governance phase. Okay, so you remember, that's good. Okay. So today we will try to deal with each and every aspect or various aspects of the different paradigms. Okay. And why Nicholas Henry is using the logic of locus and focus. What is locus and focus? These are the two variables he is using to understand the scope of the evolution of Pabad. Okay. Obviously as a theory mostly. Okay. Then the word paradigm, why this word has been used. Is it apt to use the word paradigm for the evolution of Pabad? Was there a need to use this word? We could simply study as the stages of Pabad, as the phases of Pabad. Why do we use the term paradigm of Pabad?
Because of the concept of science, they were developing it as a science.
Right, okay. So paradigm gives us a sense of certain landmarks, okay, which can or which led to the evolution of some other landmarks. Okay, so they are the landmarks on the evolution or the trajectory of evolution of public administration. Okay, they are also synonymous to something like science. Okay, so the dominant conceptual development during one particular phase was considered as the paradigm. All the other developments were somewhere around it. Okay, so let us start with the first phase. Okay, apart from Nicholas Henry, there has been a contribution of Golumbiewiczki also. Okay, but Golumbiewiczki is little abstract. Okay, so we have to first study the Nicholas Henry because he is more elaborate. Okay, but side by side we can draw a diagram of Golumbiewiczki also. Okay, like you made a illustration of Nicholas Henry. Okay, you can just draw the illustration of Golumbiewiczki also. Okay, Golumbiewiczki's model is known as two by two matrix or the model of 4 cells. Okay, obviously he is making a quadrant. Okay, he takes the locus and focus as two variables. Okay, wife, you can remember that way. Okay, so y-axis is the focus. Okay, and x-axis is the locus. Okay, then he uses two categories. relatively unspecified focus. Relatively specified focus, that means this side, whatever the focus existed was relatively unspecified. Here, the focus was specified. Same with the locus. Whatever the locus exists here, it is specified. Whatever exists here, it is unspecified. Okay. Now this is phase 1. You can remember this way. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So something like this. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the first phase, second phase, third phase and fourth phase. Okay. So through his diagram also, he has also depicted the phases of evolution. Okay. The first phase is obviously the, now he has used the categorization which Nicholas Henry has not used. Okay. His first phase is analytic politics administration dichotomy. Okay, which can be considered as the Wilson's phase, 1887 to 1900. Okay, the second phase is the concrete dichotomy. Third is public administration as management. Public administration as policy or policy science. Now obviously his phases are little restricted as compared to Nicholas Henry's. Nicholas Henry's had dealt with the evolution phase even under the globalization or the post-globalization phase, whereas he has not dealt with. So you can say he initiated his logic in 1950s and finally in 1977 somewhere he came up with this model. So he could not conceive of the developments beyond that, because 1960s was the phase when public administration as policy was studied. Okay, so you can say till most of the development till 1970s and 80s are covered here. Okay, but not beyond that, and that is why Nicholas Henry is more relevant. Okay, but nonetheless his contribution has inspired Nicholas Henry. Okay, so he is using this, that in the first phase the same type of logic, locus is unspecified. Okay, what about the focus? Focus will be specified. Okay, so focus is specified, locus is unspecified. What does it mean? That is why he's saying analytic. We were just thinking about an intellectual subject, but we had not provided the specifics of what will be the dichotomy, where will it be located. So in the second phase it becomes concretized. Okay. The locus becomes specific, but the focus becomes unspecified. Not totally. It is saying relatively. Relative with what? Relative to locus. So in the second phase, when the Wilson or the Goodenough, when the Goodenough comes and he says that there is the politics is about the expression of state will and administration is about the implementation of that will. So what they are locating, where the public administration will be studied, it is the administration. So the administrative sphere, okay, as the location of the public administration is defined. But what will be studied, that is still not defined. Okay. So in this phase, or this leads to the second phase, that what should be studied. So that phase is called as management. Okay, here they understood administration to be consisting of the techniques. Okay, so they started studying administration as technique. Already they had located administration where? In the public administration or in the administrative institutions. So location was clear or locus was clear. Okay. That is the coordinates. You can understand the location, the geographical extent, territorial extent, institution, whatever you say. So that was clear. Okay. Now they wanted the content. So content comes from the management. That what to be studied? The internal aspect of organizations, techniques, procedures, rules, structure. Now that is the content of public administration. So here the locus also becomes specified and the focus also becomes specified. Okay. Fourth stage. So from here, okay, now this is a different evolution. This again brings the public administration closer to politics. Okay. It is a consequence of numerous sophisticated methodologies which developed in the social sciences. Okay. So PubAd as political science. Now here, neither the focus is specified, neither the locus specified. That means what? It may be the intrusion of numerous disciplines into public administration. So it was becoming multidisciplinary. So content was also becoming like a chaotic content. May not be that organized, may not be that specific. Okay, institutions also, because public-private distinction may have gone, the politics administration distinction may have gone. Okay, so like today we are talking about PPP models and so many other things. Okay, where we are not differentiating between a public, both have almost similar responsibility. Structures are also similar. Okay, role and scope also becomes almost synonymous within the society. So that phase is PAS policy science. It is an open-ended phase according to Golumbiewaski. Okay. So as as the Henry categorizes, okay, but his phases are more descriptive and elaborative. His phases are more abstract in nature. But more or less, he also gives the same sense of evolution of public administration. So when we will finish this, then we will analyze this. Okay, because you see, this is more implied. Okay, Henry's is more explicit. So it is easy to first understand what are the phases. But at least you remember the diagram. Okay. Have you drawn it? Okay. So 1, 2, 3, 4 and focus on y-axis, locus on x-axis. That is only you have to remember. Okay. Fine. So let us start with the first paradigm. Can we write it as concrete politics administration dichotomy? Okay. So this phase is governed by the dichotomy, dominance of dichotomy. In fact, what is the paradigmatic nature of public administration during this phase, or what is the dominant paradigm of PubAd? Okay, that is the dichotomy. Okay. Do we have any content of public administration as of now here? Do we know what to study in public administration? We do not know the specifics. Okay, but we know where. Okay. Because we are segregating it institutionally, that one will be the politics sphere, the other will be the administrative sphere. Okay, but what exactly to be studied in administration, that is not clear. Okay. Even though we may say that policy formulation belongs to politics and implementation belongs to administration, but what to be studied in that implementation, that is not clear. Okay. Management of resources, men, material, okay, accountability, control, procedures, okay, what are statutory rules, regulations, how the internal structure of the organization will look like, that is not clear. So in this phase, the locus is there, but the focus is not there. Because we have institutionally segregated the politics from the administration. Okay. Goodnough's statement, Goodnough's book emphasizes upon the institutional distinction between the politics and administration. So we can say locus was more or less clear, but focus was not clear. So what happened in this phase? Now this phase is. Okay, we have studied good now. So we have already studied this phase. Okay, what happened? What were the consequences of this phase? Okay, so certain important aspects emerged. Okay, which gave the direction to the second paradigm. Okay, because what to be studied? They have identified the institution, but what is to be studied will come from this phase only. Okay, even though it may not be very descriptive. Okay, but it will indicate that okay, what will be the content of public administration. Like, we have already done it. You want me to reinvent the wheel? Batao. Okay. Management perspective is there. Then it's correct. Management perspective is there. Science नहीं है, positivism नहीं है. So with some unique impacts of this paradigm, okay, which is visible throughout the study of PubAd. Okay, that is why you use the word paradigms. Without understanding this, you cannot understand the present public administration. Okay, so certain impacts of this paradigm. Okay, one was inclination towards science, okay, which led to the influence of positivism. Okay. So their inclination towards a science of public administration created a kind of biasness towards employing the empirical methods, the scientific methods to restudy, look for the facts of administration. So that was influenced by the positivism. Okay. Positivism, we all know what is positivism. It is a kind of ideology which drives you to acquire knowledge through the facts. Okay, you ignore the values. Okay, what are values? Preferences, choices, subjective aspects are values. May differ from individual to individual. Okay. So positivism. Okay, now what they did? Now positivism, numerous consequences were there of positivism. Okay. Like public administration, okay, as a discipline was considered as a universe of facts. What does it mean? It is comprising only of facts. So universe of facts means what? That public administration among all the social sciences is that social science which comprises of facts. Okay. So this brings it more closer to the natural sciences, okay, or physical sciences. So public administration as a discipline was considered as a universe of facts which can negate or which can develop at the cost of values. That even if we don't study the values, okay, we can very well develop the discipline of public administration. Okay. Second, a generic discipline okay. So this phase also influenced the assumption that there can be a generic discipline of public administration. What does it mean? Universal, okay, which can be used to study any society, any political system, any form of administrative system, wherever it exists. So they are saying there are certain principles which can be developed, okay, and these principles will be more or less universally applicable. Okay. This also led to the denial of public-private distinction. Okay, that is why the positivism, more concerned with the factual knowledge. So it said, okay, it doesn't matter what is the context. What we are developing is or are the principles of administration, and administration is administration wherever it is. Okay. So this assumption also entered. Okay. No distinction between public and private administration. If you refer to Wilson, White, okay. So positivism inspired the development of further theories in public administration. Okay. Positivism is manifested in various forms. One is the fact-based study, empirical study. Any phenomena that you see around you, any social happening around you, then what you want to gather facts out of that. Okay, facts we have already discussed, they are like patterns. They are not the data nor the numbers, they are the patterns. Okay, there are certain regularities, either in behavior or in events. Okay, there will be a cause and effect relationship. Something happens, then this is bound to happen. So if we can create this kind of cause and effect relationship in understanding the social behaviors, we can say they are the social facts. Are you getting this point? Are you getting this idea? So if there will be 100 people, there is going to be a conflict. Okay, that is the assumption behind CRPC 144. Have you heard of it? Section 144. That is the assumption, that if there are 5 people, there is going to be something negative. So likewise, we can develop certain social facts. So this positivism influenced this way, that okay, totally fact-based study, exclude the values. Now positivism is also manifested in another form, that is looking for universal knowledge. Okay. Because you are identifying the facts, okay, and you assume that facts are no more or they are not changeable, more or less similar. So you are also developing a universal knowledge. Okay, universal knowledge concept is similar to the natural or physical sciences. So the vocabulary of the subject also develops like that. Okay. And universal knowledge regarding what? Various things. The structure, the functions, process, everything, let us say, with the assumption that public administration is an organization. So the organizational perspective became dominant under the dichotomy phase. Okay. They started studying the structure, they were more concerned with the structure, internal aspects of the structure, arrangement of that structure, okay, how people will be located here, how rules will be followed, what will be the universal rules which will govern any form of organization. Okay. So they considered that organization is organization irrespective of the context in which it is functioning. Okay. So the universal knowledge or positivism also eliminates what? The cultural similarities or dissimilarities between different countries. Different societies have different cultural aspects. Okay. How culture influences the form of organization. India is a traditional society, let us assume. Okay. So what will be the form of government which will govern us? No, we are a traditional society. So let us say we will have a panchayat. We may not accept the district collector, for example. Okay, but district collector has existed in India. So what does it mean? There may be multiple forms of institutions prevalent in a particular society, depending upon the level of cultural development. For villages we require panchayats, for urban areas we require something else. Okay, and there may be some transitional areas for which something else may be required. Okay, so we have sophisticated administrative systems in the urban areas, metropolis and so on, and for the other rest of the country we may have a different form of system. Okay. Certain values dominate here, certain values dominate there. Are you getting? So the influence of positivism is also manifested in the form that they did not accept that there are socio-cultural differences existed between different types of countries or different types of societies. So positivism, what it did? It homogenized the knowledge. It did not identify the heterogeneity existent among various societies. Are you understanding this? This was all the outcome of the positivism. Okay. So the differences are so there was an acceptance of homogeneity amongst different societies and culture, that is, it did not explore it was more concerned with the similarities than the dissimilarities. So these aspects were not explored as a consequence of positivism. Okay, so developing is a different category, developed is a different category, or traditional is a different type of society, modern is a different type of society, rural and industrial systems, they are all different. Okay, this aspect never came into the study of the public administration. Okay. But it is not their fault. The emergence of the public administration was contextual to the American society. Okay. So they could have traced the development of the administrative system or the study of administration with respect to the development of American society, but not necessarily comparison between American or Western society and some other society. Okay. Probably they did not feel the need also. Okay. Because until the Second World War, there was no emergence of the variety of societies which we see today. Almost 3/4 of the globe was occupied by the Britishers or the colonial powers. So obviously that might not have been, that might also have been one of the reasons that why they never went for a distinctive study of different types of society. Are you getting? So positivism influenced these aspects of the knowledge. Okay. So is positivism worth studying? Is positivism worth using? What could be the reason? Because the call for science led to the use or the ideology of positivism. Okay, positivism resulted in certain things obviously which may not be accepted today. Okay, but at that point of time, was the positivism the most feasible tool to study the public administration? Can it be considered? Why? Because when you're studying something, you need to first know the facts. You want to specify certain things. Even if you're preparing for UPSC, you need to study the syllabus. You need to know different stages of examination, without which you cannot do anything. So what does it mean? We explore the deviations later. First, we establish certain concrete principles of administration, or for matter any discipline, based on certain static aspects. So do you agree that positivism, was not capable of studying the dynamic aspects? It was more capable of studying the static aspects. Static means what? Which will be more or less permanent. So we wanted to develop that part of the knowledge which will be, or which will create the base for the public administration. It will be of non-changing type. Facts means what? Non-changing type. So the primary purpose of using the positivism or the influence of positivism was that we need to develop certain standards, certain benchmarks, certain foundation of knowledge, and this knowledge would be the fact of the public administration, non-changing type. So we may not study those aspects which are highly dynamic in nature, or which may differ from time to time, or which may differ from place to place or society to society. So we will not study that part. Let us first develop that part of the study of administration which is more or less permanent. Also, positivism was one of the best, most developed methodologies of that time, because it was inspired from the natural sciences. Among any disciplines, the natural sciences are considered to be the king of any discipline, because they have established principles. They are predictable in nature. They can be used with regularity, with precision. And every time the result will be more or less the same. So why positivism? You understand this logic. There was a need for precision. There was a need for predictability. There was a need for efficiency. There was a need to optimize the resource, cost, time, money, whatever. It was also a phase of industrial revolution, and industrialization process is totally positivistic in nature. Machines and processes cannot be developed without specific or empirical facts or the study. So see, the entire industrial process or the industrial revolution impacted this sentiment towards the positivism. So there was no other methodology. Even if it was there, it was not acceptable. And the influence of positivism not only in public administration but in most of the social sciences. So if I say the paradigm 1, what was the content of the study? Yes, dichotomy. And in dichotomy, these were the various aspects: Goodenough, Wilson, White, whatever they said. But what was the most dominant approach or the influence in the paradigm 1? That was the positivism. So in paradigm 1, this may be the consequence. There was an inclination towards science. This led to the impact or the acceptance of positivism as a methodology or as a logic. Based on that we created so many things. So locus was clear, focus was not clear, but methodology was there. So the approach which emerged in paradigm 1 was positivism. This phase inspired, in fact, the positivism still, though it was accepted as an approach to study the public administration during this phase, it could not become that dominant. It could not evolve to that extent. In the second phase or second paradigm, it evolves to the highest level. So positivism as an approach emerged, but it was not totally evolved. Positivism can also be considered as a modernism. You keep writing. Whatever I dictate, that is different as to what I am saying. Whatever is here, you write it. Positivism is also associated with modernism. Why? Why modernism? Because these terms will come. Traditional, modern, postmodern, positivist and modernist. Okay. What is modernism? Correct. Modernism can be traced to the influence of the French Revolution. Renaissance and Reformation is like continuity with change, or change with continuity. Change with continuity. Okay. So, French Revolution. Okay. Then, or you can simply write okay. Now see, we are taking it now to the philosophical level. We have studied the facts of paradigm 1. Okay, but now what will be the philosophical implications of this paradigm? How the social, cultural or the Western value system was fully integrated to this idea of positivism. Okay, so it was not just the Wilson, okay, individually coming with this idea. It was not some Taylor or Fayol or somebody. Okay, it was the entire industrial revolution process which centered around the idea of positivism. Okay. So even if we criticize them later, okay, we cannot deny that they were the products of that particular kind of socio-cultural revolution. Okay. Are you getting this point? The social evolution was an outcome of these kind of developments. Okay. And that kind of social evolution or that kind of social values, they were all inspired by the positivism. Nobody wanted to go for the subjective, nobody accepted the subjective elements. Everybody wanted a well-defined, precise knowledge. Okay. So, industrial revolution, one of the important factors, French Revolution and various values which emerged. Okay. Then your economic depression, okay, 1920s, wars, 1914, 1919, World War, okay. They were also one of the reasons. Okay. Prevalent spoil system, non-standardized administrative structures, okay, failure of the governments, okay, all influenced the search for a concrete, precise knowledge. The knowledge which would give us an edge over any other society, that was the purpose. Okay. Which would eliminate the subjectivity which is existent or which is a consequence of the socio-cultural conditions. Okay. Because the kind of religion, diversity, language, these are what? This creates subjectivity as far as the understanding of society is concerned. Okay. So how the state and its administrative system is going to function, okay, in the best possible manner, okay, irrespective of the socio-cultural conditions which exist, that was the purpose. Okay. So these various factors they influence. And why we associate it with modernism? Because it was obviously a rational study, a rational knowledge which we wanted to develop. Okay, what is a rational knowledge? Again, the knowledge which is purely objective. Okay. Factual and empirical. Okay. And which is predictable. So this rationality was considered to be similar to modernism. Modernism होता क्या मतलब? Modernism का definition बहुत relative है, ठीक है? But when we talk about the scientific temper, the scientific knowledge, the logic and reason, okay, as part of our daily vocabulary, okay, then it is modernism. Modernism is also associated with economic growth. Modernism is also associated with socio-cultural changes. Okay. But then what is the benchmark? That is the important question. ठीक है, अगर वेस्टर्न सोसाइटी मॉडर्निज्म या मॉडर्निज्म का बेंचमार्क है तो वो वेस्टर्नाइजेशन हो सकता है. That way westernization may be considered similar to modernization. Okay. But it is not necessary. So modernism is what? When we discard the traditional socio-cultural value system, okay, and embrace some new values. Okay, new values on what? Based on logic and rationality that may be unique to its own society, not necessarily borrowing from someone else. That may be considered as modernism. Okay, but here modernism is considered in narrow sense. It is mostly related to the industrial revolution and the scientific temper. Okay. Why I said narrow? Because modernization may be understood in various dimensions. Okay. Whatever traditional wisdom we have today, okay, that can also be considered aspect of modernism if we use it today. If we are using the traditional wisdom to solve the problems today, it is modernism. Because we are what? Modifying the traditional knowledge according to today's needs. So we are modern enough to anticipate what change will be required in the traditional knowledge. Are you getting? So logic and rationality can be associated with modernism. Certain things you accept without questioning. Okay, tradition. Okay. When you accept or you don't accept things without questioning, without empirical scrutiny, then it is modernism. So modernism will be visible in various aspects: food, culture, industrial development or economic development, your language, your art, architecture, aesthetics, various things. Okay. So there will be a transition from the existent and a move towards more progressive, that is modernism. Okay. So positivism also considered equivalent to modernism. Okay. But can we call Wilson a modern or a modern theorist? Yes, why not? Wilson was talking about reform. Wilson was talking about ethics and morality. Wilson was talking about changing the traditional structures of administration, modifying it. Okay, the traditional ideology, okay, dominance of political system. Okay, what? These are all reformist in nature. So they are modern in nature. Okay. But can we call dichotomy as modern? Now see, when we compare this paradigm, let's say, to the sixth paradigm, then we may not call this as modern. But when we compare the Wilson to the existent values prior to the Wilson, we can call Wilson as modern. Why? Because modern is not a static idea. Modernism is not a static concept. It keeps evolving. That is why it is a relative concept. Okay. So I am telling this, emphasizing, because many times you will find the questions, the modern theories of administration. Now what are modern theories of administration? It is very difficult. What is modern? Today, 10 years back, 20 years back, 50 years back, or Wilson was the modern. Okay. So there will always be a relative comparison when we say modern. Okay. So positivism was a modernist development because it was based on logic, science, rationality, and prior to that, whatever the existent knowledge was prior to the positivism, okay, that was purely based on tradition. Okay. Something which is accepted because it is. So positivism was like a revolution. Okay. Consequence of various things. Okay. Emergence of scientific temper. And this got reflected at the social level also. Okay. People discarded religion. If you see, go to the European context. So prior to this French Revolution, okay, there was the dominance of theocracy, okay, or the rule of religion. Okay. Or divine command theory. king was considered as the march of God on earth. If you read Rousseau and others, okay, they are talking about this idea that king was what? The king was the God, or he was the agent of God. Okay, so this was a divine command theory phase. So to contradict this phase, the emergence of positivism. Okay, various reformers, including Rousseau, Hume. Okay, have you heard these names? Okay, Herodotus, Epicurus, Galileo Galilei, and so many people. Okay, who came. Okay, they started questioning it. Okay, so somewhere they were creating consciousness regarding the logic and reason. Okay, that idea culminated into the positivism. Okay, so it is important to understand the context of the positivism also, not just the term positivism. Okay, so it led to, obviously, it influenced the entire social sciences. Okay, and it led to a kind of revolution which was similar to the modernism in the science or social sciences. So social sciences also started embracing the techniques of the natural sciences. Okay. So positivism was a big influence. Okay, and it can be considered as the guiding principle behind all the developments that took later in the field of public administration. Okay, because it was the foundation of the study of public administration. Okay. So Wilson, because he's talking about a science, Goodenough, okay, talking about a defined understanding, empirical understanding of administration and its technique. L.D. White, influenced by the management perspective. So all of them were somewhere inspired by the positivism. Okay. Are you understanding this? So when we take positivism or the methodology of study as the reference, we will say it is the positivism which influenced the paradigm 1, 2, both. In paradigm 2 it evolved to the highest level. In paradigm 2 it was initiated as the methodology or approach to study the public administration. Are you understanding this? So positivism comes with the dominance of fact. So if I take positivism as reference and contradict it, then I would say, or I would use a term post-positivism. Okay. Post-positivism is not denial of positivism. It is only the addition, the value addition to the positivism. Anti-positivism, yes, it is a criticism of the positivism. Okay, so various terms are used in conjunction. Positivism, post-positivism. Post-positivism are the developments which were led by basically the positivisms. So as a consequence of empirical knowledge, we ourselves became empirical. We became more logical. We started looking for the facts, and because of the facts, probably our knowledge base strengthened, no doubt. Okay, so we cannot deny the impact of positivism. So positivism became the mainstay of theory building in public administration as a consequence of paradigm 1, okay, the most dominant approach of paradigm 1. Okay. So in paradigm 1, obviously they started searching for the facts of administration as the locus was more or less identified. Focus was not developed, but yes, at academic level, okay, or analytical level, okay, they had identified that implementation is the domain of public administration. Okay. Because Wilson has also emphasized that the field of administration is not the field of politics. Okay. They are two distinct fields. So somewhere the implementation is the domain of public administration that became quite, you can say, implicit, or you can say quite explicit, not implicit, because though they did not identify the content, but still they were very clear that it is not going to participate or to study the formulation of the policy is not the domain of public administration. Okay. So dichotomy emerged, dichotomy became dominant. Okay, what were the consequences of dichotomy? We studied everything under Wilson. Okay, can you tell me some? What were the consequences of the dichotomy or the emergence of the basis or assumption of dichotomy and its impact on the evolution of public administration? Okay. Correct. So more focus on the techniques, internal aspects of the public administration. Okay. Excluded it from its social role. We have all discussed in the democratic context what were the roles of the respective political and administrative institutions. Okay. Did it also reduce the responsibility of the administrators? Right. Increase the efficiency, but it reduced the responsibility in what sense? Because social responsibility as well as the political responsibility, giving more autonomy to the administration. Fine. So this inherent biasness, okay, towards the science, towards the fact, and towards the study of techniques of administration, okay, this led to the second paradigm. So all the developments which were the consequence of the first paradigm, or which should have been, what should have been the content of public administration, all these developments took place in the second paradigm. Okay. So let us come to that second paradigm. Okay. Paradigm 2. This is very important, probably the most important paradigm. Do you have previous year question papers with you of public administration? If you don't have, kindly take it. Okay, now you can do the questions starting from 2008. Okay, no need to go before that, okay, because 2008 syllabus changed. So you can just keep doing the questions. Now you will understand the questions. Okay. So paradigm 2 starts from 1927 to 1937. Okay, this is the most important paradigm. Various names: era of principles, era of orthodoxy, principles phase, even the post-COP phase or post-COP paradigm. It is also referred to that way also. Okay. So under the paradigm 2, because the content was becoming now more clear. Okay, location had already been identified as administration. But what happened? If you go and refer to the L.D. White's statement, okay, that we have written, the study of public administration starts with the base of management, okay, or should start from the base of management rather than foundation of law. So what does this mean? Okay, the management perspective in 1926, L.D. White's book, the management biasness entered into the study of administration. So what happened? Now the content was becoming clear that what is the study? It is the techniques and principles of organization. It is the techniques and principles of administration. From where we will get this knowledge? By studying the organizations. Where we will study the organizations? In the management. So when we will study the private industries, when we will study the private sphere, okay, there the organizations are well developed. Okay, there the organizations are more rational. because industrial revolution was taking place. So all the techniques or the structure of the organization that we want to study, the internal aspects of administration that we want to study, we have to study or we can borrow it from the private sector. Are you understanding this? Once they had identified that, okay, this is the content, from where this content will be studied. Okay. So they emphasized upon the study of this content, the techniques, the principles, the procedures, the structure from the industrial organizations. Okay. As a consequence of the LD White's assumption that the study of public administration or administration as such must start from the base of management. And management perspective was dominant in the private sector and the private industries. Okay, because they are more concerned with resource optimization, efficiency, cost benefit analysis and all those things. So this phase, when this phase starts, okay, it starts with certain logic. That okay, the content is now becoming more clear and where the content will be studied, or for that matter, what will be the content, this content will be derived from the study of the private organization, industrial organizations. So even though we are calling this phase as the principles phase, even though we are saying that most of the content, theoretical content of public administration emerged during this phase, okay, that content is not coming from the political context, that content is not coming from the democratic context, that content is coming from the economic context, that is the industrial revolution. So it would be better to call them as not as the principles of administration but as the principles of organization, because administration will include the social context, the power, authority, the role of the administration in the society. Okay, it will be included in that. But here we are developing the principles of the internal organization. Okay, and where these principles are mostly developed, or they were mostly developed in the industrial organizations. So it would be wise to call them as the principles of organization rather than, or principles of management rather than principles of administration. The distinction which we have already made, that what is an administration and what is a management. Are you getting this? So this phase dominated the study of public administration from the organizational perspective, structural perspective. अब समझ में आ रहा है क्यों पढ़ा था वो सब पहले, ठीक है? So this, you can read what are the specific impacts. Managerial view. So, study of power from organizational perspective. Now, this organizational perspective borrowed its content from where? Whatever the theoretical developments were taking place, industrial management. Okay, that is, you can say, technically the private organizations. Private organizations. So now once this perspective comes, that most of the knowledge regarding the study of administration that we'll do, the theories which we'll develop, will be coming from the study of what? The industrial organizations, because the industrial organization or industrialization requires the best managed organization. So what will be the best principles, what will be the universal principles that we'll borrow or will develop, will be mostly with respect to the industrialization process. So this knowledge can be used now in the administration also. Are you understanding this or not? So whatever knowledge which will be developed, okay, in the industrial management sector, that knowledge can be also borrowed or used in the administration also. Okay, so instead of developing separate theories or principles of administration, why don't we develop and improve upon the principles of organization and management and use it in the administration? So what does this mean? That they did not consider the distinction between the public and the private organization. Whatever knowledge which was developed in the private sector, okay, in the economic sphere, they could easily use in the political sphere, that is the administration. Okay. And that was the consequence of the isolation of administration from the politics. That administration is an instrument, administration is technique based, and what is it that we have to study? The techniques. Where we can study the techniques? The industrial management. So there was, because of this perspective, okay, whatever knowledge developed, okay, that was also again the universal knowledge, okay, and it did not find or did not accept any distinction between the public and the private. Fayol, Taylor, Golik, Ervik, whosoever developed principles during this phase, okay, they have all said that administration is administration, organization is organization, principles are principles, irrespective of where they are to be used. They can govern the human association of any kind. Like Fayol, he is saying that human association of any kind can be governed by these principles. Be it religious, be it industrial, be it political, be it economic, be it social, whatever. So their concern was what? You can simplify it and say the principle of organizing and managing. Now this organizing and managing is being done where it is not their concern. Are you getting this point? So they were more concerned with developing the tools of sharpening the knife. For what purpose the knife would be used, that is not their concern. They are saying that once we acquire the knowledge of sharpening the knife, now we have the technique. Okay. Wherever you want, you can use it and sharpen the knife. So simple logic they are using here also, that what we are looking, we are trying to find out the best principle of organizing and managing. Wherever you want, use these principles, organize and manage. Are you understanding now? So they were concerned, they were after the principles of organization and management rather than principle of administration. Okay. And there was very important reason for that, because this is the phase, 1900 to 1940s is the phase when the industrial revolution was maturing in the America, US. Okay. No doubt it was industrialized. Okay, but maturity of the industrial revolution was taking place. Okay. Why? Most of the demands, most of the needs of the societies were fulfilled by industries. Now imagine if the industries are fulfilling the needs, what is the use of the government and the administration? Why? Why it is a drawback? Today you are using some Android, Jelly Bean or something, and tomorrow some new application comes, improvement. Okay. So you don't use it, it's okay. Okay, but what will happen? Now if you have to communicate with somebody who is using the latest software, okay, now that will be a limitation on you. Okay, so you'll say, okay, I will not be able to send the picture, the WhatsApp. Okay, I'll call you. Are you getting? This is what you'll do. Okay. So I'll scan and mail you. I cannot send it to you. What will happen? Various kinds of process problems will be created. So if the society once becomes dependent on the industrial revolution, once the society needs are fulfilled, and obviously all the society needs or everybody's need cannot be fulfilled at the same time. So in phases, maybe urban areas first, or metros first, then urban areas, then towns, then cities, or then B towns, then rural areas. So can you revert the process of industrialization? You cannot. So to improve the benefits of industrialization, to optimize the cost, to improve the efficiency, what you need? You need to develop the new techniques. So you what? Consistently you will work, or you can say, okay, 24/7 you are working for what? Improving and upgrading the techniques of management and organization. So that the expansion of the benefits of industrialization can go to everyone. Okay. Are you getting this point or not? So if somebody comes from the village and sees that, okay, people are using toothbrush to clean their teeth. Okay, we are still using the neem datun. Okay. So what he'll do? Okay, he'll try to buy 2-3 from here and he'll say, okay, I'll take it back now. Now imagine the industrial revolution. Now it is not at its peak. It is able to cater to the demands of, let's say, 10 lakh people residing in urban areas, and out of 10 lakh it is able to cater to demands of 6 lakh people only. And people from rural areas also coming and they are seeing that, okay, this can be used, they are also buying and taking it back. Now what will happen? A gap between the demand and supply. So what do you need? You need to increase the productivity. Okay. To legitimize itself the industrial revolution, you need to increase the productivity. Otherwise, who will accept this process as the dominant force of economic development? Nobody. Are you getting this point? So to legitimize this process of economic development through the industry is needed to expand their base, the product, diversify the product, and at the same time, they needed to include more and more people or customers into the benefit. So for that, the efficiency was required. Industrial processes needed to be improved. So you can imagine that way, that now it was the industry-led development of society. All the economic needs of the society to be fulfilled by the industrial revolution, whether it is in the public sector, whether it is in the private sector. Understanding? So in societies which did not have relative disparities, at least socio-cultural, maybe economic. So in those societies, it was industrial revolution or economic development which was necessary. In the societies which were influenced by the socio-cultural disparities and also the economic disparities, the government's role became more prominent, like the developing societies. Okay, but till that time you will not find the concept of developing societies technically. Okay, either they were colonized or they were industrialized. Are you getting this point? You understanding this logic or not? So your industrial revolution, you can say, was the most dominant force of the social evolution also. Socio-cultural relationships, various changes were taking place as a consequence of industrialization. So the administration being considered synonymous to management. Okay. It cannot be, or it could not be considered as to be a failure on part of those theorists, because they were the products of the industrialization, and industrialization was the driving force behind any type of social evolution or economic evolution which was taking place there. So industries became the agents of social change. Industries became the agents of economic change. And so, what is administration? The same thing. Administration more concerned with the static aspects, regulation, control, defense, security. Okay, whatever the change was happening, that was happening through the industrial revolution. So what will be the content of study? If we need to study that, okay, how can we regulate, or for that matter, how can we promote the transition of the society from here to there. So we'll study the industries. What else? Okay. So that phase is, or industrial revolution phase, okay, dominated by the study of industrial management. Okay. As this phase was a phase of mass production, okay, it was a mass production phase. What is mass production phase? Production for the masses. Same type of products. Okay, because it is based on basically phase of consumption. Okay, you are not concerned with the quality, you are concerned with the quantity. So you are creating similar type of products, huge in number. So what is your target? Your target is the surplus. You want to increase, you fulfill your needs, you need to create surplus. Okay, because mass phase consumption. Now every day people are using something. So what? You need to mass produce it. Okay, not much concerned with the quality, but concerned with the quantity, because you have to fulfill that basic requirement. Okay, so it was a mass production phase. Most of the needs of the society were fulfilled by these industries. Okay, and so the study of industries or the industrial organizations became inevitable. To understand that how the society or the economy is going to transform during this phase, or how it can be transformed in a better way during this industrial revolution. Okay. Are you getting this point or not? नहीं? आ रहा है, जा रहा है या सिर्फ आ रहा है? इतना समझ में आया तुम्हें? ठीक है, लिखो. Okay. Paradigm is that's right. Whatever you have noted down from here, you start from here. Take a paragraph and write. Okay. The context of the second paradigm. The context of the second paradigm. First क्या है? Second में पहुंच गए ना? फर्स्ट का कहा क्या लिखना है अब? विल्सन वाइट सब लिख चुके, अब क्या लिखोगे? मेरा नाम लिख दो नीचे. ठीक है. द कॉन्टेक्स्ट ऑफ सेकंड पैराडाइम. द कॉन्टेक्स्ट ऑफ सेकंड पैराडाइम is was the industrial revolution. That is, लिखिए, the phase of mass production, where most of the economic needs of the society were met by these industries. In fact, the role of state and the administration vis-a-vis the society was almost taken over by these industries. Most of the Western countries were following the capitalist model. The capitalist model obviously leading to capitalist model, obviously leading to a laissez-faire state. A laissez-faire state based on the classical liberalism of Adam Smith. What is a laissez-faire state? Policy of non-interference in the economic activities. Most of the or almost all the economic activities are done by the private sector or private industries or by the market, you can say. Okay. And only the regulatory functions or the basic functions are done by the government. So as most of the Western countries were following the capitalist model, okay, the emergence of laissez-faire state, and obviously USA was and even is a laissez-faire state today also, okay, based on the classical liberalism. So this also gave more and more role or increasing role to the industries, the private sector, the market-driven development. Okay, right. This led to the expansion of the role and scope of the process of industrialization. Okay. In fact, to fulfill the demands of the society, efficiency and productivity became the watchwords. What are watchwords? Huh? Became the watchwords of administration. Watchwords are basically the guiding words. Okay. The things which lead you, which you look for. Okay. So they became the watchwords of administration. Okay, why? Because administration or the government had to what? Government had to sail through this industrial revolution. The government had to manage this industrial revolution, even though it was not performing the economic activities, but it was also not becoming a restriction in the industrial development. So the administration or the role of the administration became synonymous to what? The management of industrialization. Are you understanding this? So when the economic system of the society is going through transition, what will be the role of the administration? To make this transition possible, because this transition is inevitable. It cannot restrict the transition, it cannot control the transition, but it can manage the transition. So how to smoothly manage this transition from a traditional state or from a traditional society to now an industrial society? So that became the prime duty of the administration. Okay, that is what we have studied also. Administration is what? Trying to fulfill certain ends which has been decided politically, or it is trying to identify how to do certain things. So as industrial revolution was inevitable and industrial revolution became the fact of the Western societies, of the capitalist systems. Okay. So what was the role of the administration? To manage this industrial revolution. not to manage the economic system, but to manage the industrial revolution. The economic systems were managed by the economic organizations, the industrial organizations. But to govern this, or to at least address the problems which will be there in this industrial revolution, that was the role of the administration. So now you understand this way, that how the administration will understand that how I need to manage the industrial revolution unless it studies the specific principles and techniques of the industries. To manage the disaster, at least have to know the specifics of the disaster. Is it or not? To control a crime, at least I have to think like a criminal. So same logic here. So to administer a society, or to govern, or for that matter to facilitate the process of industrial revolution, obviously the administration also required the knowledge of this industrial development. Now see how the study of administration became synonymous to the study of industrial development. Are you understanding this? No, you're right. The industrial revolution was like an irreversible change. Irreversible change, which was which was not only impacting the economic system, but also various other aspects of the society, like you can write in points, like the social relations, new classes, emergence of economic elites, industrialists, wealthy owners, financiers, various type of intermediaries and so on. So various type of economic elites which were not till then, which were not there in the societies till then, they were emerging now. Agree? If there was no advertising, if there was no IPL, okay, and if there was no involvement of corporates, so imagine 30-40 years back, okay, nobody wanted to play sports. Okay. So the moment if you had asked your father or told your father that Dhoni had 1100 crores, even if you're IAS officer, how much have you created in 30 years? With honesty. So not even enough to buy a Toyota Altis. Not enough to buy that also. Okay, so you cannot buy a 20 lakh rupees car if you're honest. Okay, and there are people who are still having the Maruti Alto or Suzuki, okay, who retired as chief secretaries or secretaries, very honest people. So the logic is that when you prefer a career in public services, money is not the consideration. Okay. Earlier, if you preferred a service in some other sector, there was no money available. So ultimately you preferred what? Stability to the economic growth. But today you have choices. Why? Because of the corporates. So various types of classes have emerged today. Okay. Today sportsmen are idols. Even though they might not have passed class 8th. Okay. So in a society which values education but has the highest number of illiterates, okay. Okay. The society which values democracy but most of the politicians are illiterates. Okay. So logic is what? In that society we idealize those things. Okay. Because today in Indian society at least the education is still considered a very important part of the socialization of any individual. But we value a sports star. Okay. What Shah Rukh Khan is saying, that is more important for us. Okay. Okay. So logic is what? Modi is also on the lines of Shah Rukh Khan only. Okay. He wants to emerge as more as an icon than as a leader. Okay. So statesmen and icons, they are two different things. So the logic is what? The emergence of various elites, what they will do? They will change the social relations in the society. They will transform the relationship. They will transform the mannerisms, the behavior, the orientation. Okay, the idealisms of the society, it will change. Okay. So today you may, the moment somebody says, okay, I want to be cricketer, okay, father तैयार हो जाएगा, हाँ चलो कहाँ academy है, चलो चलो चलो. Because he knows that is one way of probably mobilizing yourself in the society. So are you getting? So the social relations, cultural values, traditional values, they all change. Even if something like industrial development is taking place, okay, there will be emergence of various social classes which will hold the primary place within this industrial development. Okay. So what they will do? They will impact so many things. Okay. So emergence of economic elites, then expansion of employment opportunities. Okay, now see, once the expansion of employment opportunities will take place, what do you want? You require people to have skills. For this, there is a need for investment in human resource. Now see how the state's role will change. The state which was more concerned with the management of defense, or sorry, not management, but with the defense and security, with law and order, with usual operations of transport and something civil supplies. Okay, now it will change. How? It will lead to the expansion of educational institutions, universities, technical institutions, investment in R&D, and so many things will take place. Can you visualize it practically? How it is happening? So moment industrial development is taking place, or dominance of industries, what is happening? The nature of the state's role is also changing. Okay. So administration will have to learn new skills, will it or not? Traditionally it is doing some predefined functions. Now the moment this change takes place, the role of the state and the administration also transform, because new types of problems will come. Okay. You require what? Now, labor laws, employee management relations. Okay. All these things will have to be looked into by the government now. Okay. You need various statutory provisions, number of amendments, number of legislations. Okay. Equal Wages Act. Okay. Gender. So many things now will come. Okay. Also there will be emergence of, like Weber is a theorist. Weber identifies that there will be emergence of white collared managerial class. They are the people who are basically employed, okay, but they are working on the behalf of the owner. Okay. So ownership, management and employee, now the three levels created. Okay. Because industrialization will come with this process, professionalization. So there will be emergence of a managerial class which probably till now was not visible in the society. And who is this managerial class? Can be considered as the middle class or the higher middle class, who will have money at disposal, but it is neither the owner nor it is like a worker. Okay. So it is a typical class which emerges. Okay. And many of the so-called aspiring elites enter into that managerial class. Okay. As those societies were obviously not caste-based or culture-based. Okay. So what will happen? In those societies, various people from various sections of the society, they will mobilize into the managerial class. Okay. So industrial revolution will create new towns, townships, managerial class, their standards of living, their conduct, everything will change now. Understanding this? So, based on this logic, now what happens? The knowledge regarding how to conduct the affairs of the state will also have to be modified. Okay. These developments, take another paragraph. Right. Sorry. These developments require a consequent change in the theory and practice of administration. In the theory and practice of administration. Practice of administration. The administration's primary role would be to manage this industrial revolution. Manage this industrial revolution efficiently and effectively. Efficiently and effectively. For this, it becomes inevitable. For this, it becomes inevitable to understand the industrial process. Understand the industrial process. So most of the theories and principles, right? So most of the theories and principles which emerged during this phase were the theories of industrial management or organization safely borrowed into the study of administration. Safely borrowed into the study of administration. Next line लिखिए. Obviously the context of this knowledge was Western industrial society. So see, the moment I say industrial society, it refers to specific things. Okay. It does not only refer to only the economic relationships or the kind of economic processes which we are using in the society. It also refers to so many socio-cultural changes which take place. So can you differentiate an industrial society from a non-industrial society? How can you differentiate? Can I say that industrial society would be more educated than the non-industrial society? Why? Wise नहीं होगी, educated तो होगी. Technically more specialized. So the moment I move towards the specialization, I am modernizing as well as industrializing. Specialization तो चाहिए ना. मैनेजर के लिए अलग स्किल, अलग करिकुलम, अलग यूनिवर्सिटी कोर्स, वर्कर्स के लिए वोकेशनल कोर्स, समथिंग समथिंग समथिंग. व्हाट यू वांट? यू आर स्पेशलाइजिंग. So the process of industrialization is what? The process of specialization. As we move towards specialization, what does it mean? That we need to create that knowledge. Variety of functions will emerge, variety of techniques will emerge. Okay, so specialization is what? Basically the diversification of techniques. So many people have studied this process of industrialization. Okay. From the organizational perspective, from the structural perspective, from the functional perspective, from the managerial perspective, okay, from the instrumental perspective and so on. All this combined is the phase of paradigm 2. What all theories emerged as a consequence of the study of organization, mostly the industrial organization, okay, and the various facets of this industrial organization, that is called as the paradigm 2, or what we say, the principles phase. So if you are asked a question, can the paradigm 2 or the name paradigm or given to paradigm 2 as the principles phase of public administration, is this a misnomer? Yes, because it is the principles of organization and management, not the principle of public administration. Even if we take another person who has contributed, a dominant contributor to this phase, Max Weber, and whose name is synonymous to the bureaucracy, even he cannot be called as a political or a social thinker. Okay, he was a sociologist, no doubt, but whatever his social analysis he did was basically in the context of the Industrial Revolution. Though he is not a management theorist, but he is neither a political scientist. Okay. At the maximum he can be considered as a sociologist. But what kind of sociologist? Who is studying the economic impact or the impact of the industrialization on the society. Okay. Karl Marx prior to Weber. So Marx also studied the impact of industrialization. Okay. So he equally contributed to the understanding of the Industrial Revolution and its impact on the Western societies. So you cannot deny Karl Marx from the study of the principles of the administration or organization. Why? Even though he is not talking about the administration, he is mostly talking about the state. Okay. Already Wilson has divided politics and administration. So he is talking about politics or state. Okay. But administration is very much an extension of the state. So contribution of Karl Marx prior to the people who contributed to this, or Weber, this all gets integrated into the principles phase. Okay. So this phase is purely influenced by capitalism and industrial development. Most of the developments which took place were inspired or because of the need of the industrialization, they had to be developed and studied. Okay. Why it was used in administration? Because there was no distinction considered between the organization or the study of management and the administration. Okay. Why the distinction was not there? Because the administration's primary role and the task became the management of the Industrial Revolution. So from where the content of administration will come? It will come from the content of the industrial development. Okay. That is why we say what? That in this phase, now, even though the locus had been identified in the first phase, okay, focus was not there, and focus emerged during this phase because the content was duly developed, okay, or at least it was developing, okay, but locus became blurred. Why it became blurred? Because no public private distinction. Now what we identified in the first phase, that okay, administration is located where? Here. Doing. Okay. But in the second phase what? Whatever they are doing, okay, a part of that work is being done by the industrial revolution. So they were more concerned with organization and not a particular type of organization. Okay. In fact, they never identified that there exist two different types of organization. They said organization is public organization is private organization. And most of, you see practically also, most of the economic tasks were performed by the private organizations. So a major part of the government or responsibility of the government was being borne by the private sector. So how can you institutionally distinguish? Well, that was the traditional role of the government, but under the industrial revolution, the role of the government was performed by the private industries. So in the practical aspect also, okay, the economic needs or there are so many other issues of the society solved by the private sector. Okay, public sector was also facilitating or managing the change. So what is happening? They accepted that okay, there is no institutional difference between public and private. Because our concern is what? Our concern is development of knowledge. So you cannot say that here there was no government organization, it was there. But as a focus of study or as the understanding of administration, okay, the administration was not confined to the study of government organization. It included the study of private organizations also, and that is why we are saying the locus became blurred. It is not that bureaucracy was not there. But you see the discipline, the study of the discipline, it no more revolved around only the study of public organizations, it only studied the organizations. So you see institutionally the study of administration revolved where? Within the private also and within the public also. So in spite of locus becoming prominent in the first paradigm, it became diffused in the second paradigm. Content was clear. Okay, so I would not say it was not there, but relatively this became prominent and this became little mellowed down, it became little confused, it became little anarchic in nature. Not clear. It was more, focus was more clear compared to the locus. So there were various developments which took place. Don't take only the date or the cutoff date as the basis of this paradigm. Okay, the influences of the paradigm has started right from the paradigm 1. Okay, so we are just using a cutoff date to signify that okay, this is the phase where this reached its epitome, the highest, the apex of this particular paradigm. It was during this particular phase. Okay. But the ideology or the basic principles of the paradigm can be traced way back to 1927. Okay, they can be traced to somewhere around 1900, 1910. Okay, many theories were developed around 1900, 1910. Okay, they are also included in this, irrespective of the date when they were developed. Why? Because the paradigm or the emergence of the paradigm, the conceptual development is traced to this phase. Okay, but when we know that okay, this was the dominant concept, this was the dominant idea, okay, behind the emergence of the content of public administration. So when we look back and we find out okay, there were some other developments which were somewhere inspired by this concept, but they were not dominant then. They became dominant now. No, not necessarily PSUs, but when you talk about the context of Western countries, it was not correct. Depression you can say. But the phase of 1900 to 1930s or 29, or even after depression also, only the welfare activities increased. Most of the economic activities still in the private sector. Okay, that can be called in the context of the developing countries. Okay. So emergence of IRC, 1940s. Okay. Even prior to that, in America, Okay, in independent regulatory commissions. Okay, we'll tell what we will study what it is. Okay. So you cannot say that it was led by the government. It was not. Okay. So most of the economic developments, 1950s and 60s, we see the revival of the government. Okay, but then again, a criticism. Why? Because just now we have discussed that once you become dependent, okay, the private sector, the public sector cannot compete with the private sector as far as the quality, okay, or the customized needs which are being served by a particular product is concerned. So in the economic arena, the state could never compete with the private sector in the Western countries. Okay, never. Even though even if the industries or certain organizations were sponsored by the government, even then their functioning was purely private. So, okay, they functioned on the principles of the private organization, they were not basically the government organization. Okay. But you can say any form of organization, economic organization, whether in public or private, more or less is shared the similarities. Okay, so we are referring to this. So in this principles phase, okay, so this paradigm 2, when we talk about, we take this as the cutoff year, okay, because to indicate the dominance of this conceptual development. But many of the theoretical developments would have been prior to this also. Okay. So under this phase or under this paradigm, we will chronologically list various developments. Okay. What theories? Okay, so we can divide it. Okay. Theories or theoretical and functional developments. Okay, this is more with respect to okay. Now as administration is studying mostly the management aspect. So public administration theory would be comprising, or administrative theory would be comprising more of the study of the management of the organizations. Okay, but you cannot say that correspondingly society was not changing. Are you understanding? So theory of administration and the practice of administration. Now practice of administration was not only dominated by the industrialization. There were so many other events also which were taking place and which were equally important. Like industrial development was important, but what about the First World War? What about the racial discrimination? What about the socio-cultural conflicts? What about the migrants? Okay. What about the conflicts of resource distribution? So many things were also there. So there were a number of functional developments which were taking place in the society. That means how the functions of the government and the administration were changing, and how other correspondingly the theories of the public administration were also evolving. So we can easily connect that whether this knowledge was able to cater to this need, or whether this need inspired the knowledge or not. Understanding? So a collaboration between the theory and the practice. So in the first phase of paradigm 1, okay, or paradigm 2, number of theoretical developments took place, okay, and functional developments took place. Functional developments are what? The way society is transforming. So the nature of state is changing, the nature of political, social problems, issues, they are also modifying, they are also undergoing number of changes, okay, and correspondingly theory is also emerging. Okay, but it is not necessary that theory will emerge in consonance with the change in the society, not necessary. Okay. Today we may have advanced knowledge of artificial intelligence, but we are not using it extensively. Okay, we may have developed number of neural networks. You understand what are neural networks? Neural networks, have you heard of? Sympathetic haptics. Have you heard of this? No. Okay. So there are various technologies which are still, yesterday only people got Nobel Prize for physics. For what? Gravitational waves. Few years back also somebody got the award for gravitational wave. Okay. And then prior to that in medicine, one day before, body clock. Okay. So say that there are various technologies which are there. We are not using them. But we have enough knowledge regarding that. Okay. So what does it mean? The knowledge was being developed. Okay. Obviously some knowledge or we were inspired by certain various social developments, economic developments, cultural developments, and then knowledge was being developed. And also independently a part of knowledge was being developed. May not be very relevant to what is happening. Okay. Because you see, if we are studying the economic development or industrial revolution, we are only studying a part of the society. Society consists of political, social, cultural, traditional, religious, various other elements apart from the economic. So how we are studying we are considering economic development or industrial revolution as the major force, but we are neglecting so many other aspects of the society. So various social developments were taking place, functional developments, and not necessarily the theory was catering to all of them. But theory was being independently developed. Have you understood this much? Fine. So there were a number of theoretical developments. Let's chronologically trace it. So I can divide it into various phases. Okay. During this paradigm only, I am dividing into various phases. Let's say I use the term classical, traditional, classical theories, traditional theories. Within the traditional theories, the structural theories, or I can say the structuralist functional theories, so in traditional I have a structuralist perspective, I have a functionalist perspective. Now try to understand, this traditional does not mean non-modern. Okay. This traditional has a specific reference. These are all modern theories. They are modern, but they are referred to as traditional. Okay. Traditional means what? Which is linked to the origin, which is linked to the predominant notions in the beginning or the evolution of a particular thing. Okay. Classical means evergreen. That is the meaning of classical, which is not state of the art, which is not contemporary but not irrelevant. It is not contemporary but still relevant. Okay. So the classical concept Wilson, Goodnow, Taylor, various other people who have contributed, they all come under the classical tradition. Okay. Even many of these may come under the classical tradition because they become inevitable as far as the understanding of the public administration is concerned, or the study of administration, but you can simplify it. That there is a classical perspective, there is a traditional perspective. Within the traditional, we have structural, functional, economic, rational perspective. Separately, we are taking the scientific management perspective. Scientific management, because it is basically, we'll write the names. Wait. Then you have the administrative management. Administrative management perspective, or you can also call that as management process school. Various people have contributed to different types of perspective. So generally the classical here means the classical is the basis. So when we talk about the administration or the study of administration, we always talk about Wilson or so many other people who contributed to the base of the study of administration. So classical is something like evergreen. You cannot deny its utility ever. So Wilson becomes a purely classical theorist. Why? Because he is inevitable to the understanding of public administration. So Wilson है, फिर your Cameralists we have discussed already, who contributed number of other philosophers coming from the Western European context, American context, Madison, Jefferson, Hamilton, many people. They are all classical. Even in the European context, there was a person who is credited with he is credited with the emergence of PubAd as a discipline in the Europe, but not in the American context. Lawrence von Stein, somewhere 1850s, talking about same kind of things as the Wilson, but his context was European, so never considered as the father. Though he can be called as the father of European public administration. But our context is not the Europe, our context is America. But all these people, Chanakya, Kautilya, Kautilya वही चाणक्य ही है ना, same thing. So Machiavelli, Chanakya, etc., all can be called as classical. But the moment we are taking paradigm as the reference and 1900 to 1926 as the first paradigm, so the dominant classical thinkers will be what? Wilson, White, Goodenough. Who will always be relevant to public administration. So हमारे लिए ये Wilson, White, Goodlaw. They became logically more important for us. Otherwise, a reference to the classical would be made, all of them would come. Some directly associated with the evolution of PubAd in America, some indirectly associated. But most of them are associated in one way or the other way in the evolution of the study of administration. Are you getting this point? भाई इन्होंने डेवलप किया पबैड को, पबैड का इमर्जेंस इनको एट्रीब्यूट किया जाता है. सबसे बड़ा तो कंट्रीब्यूशन है ये, वरना तुम सोचते भी क्यों कि भाई एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन को पढ़ना है. Okay, from vision to concretization of the idea of study, okay, they have done everything. ठीक है. तो एरोप्लेन जो बनाया था राइट ब्रदर्स ने, या वॉट एवर दैट इंडियन इज देयर महाराष्ट्रियन, ओके, वो एरोप्लेन आज यूज हो सकता है नहीं, लेकिन हम बोलते नहीं कि उन्होंने बनाया था, तो आज इवॉल्व हो चुका है. ठीक है, लेकिन एरोप्लेन तो एरोप्लेन था, चाहे वो ऐसा हो चाहे आज का हो. ठीक है, तो आइडिया ऑफ एरोप्लेन विल गो टू राइट ब्रदर्स, एटलीस्ट वी एग्री टू दैट. सेम वे हियर. Okay. So even if their conception was elementary, may have been modified several times now, okay, but you cannot deny the origin of the administration to the very basis or the foundation which were laid by these people. तो उनको हम classical बोलते हैं. ठीक है. लेकिन obviously classical, whatever the concept developed here, whatever the ideology developed here, it influenced all the later developments. So classical were inspired, influenced heavily by, traditionals were implied or influenced heavily by the classicals. Why we call them traditional? क्योंकि जो सबसे पहले सोच पैदा हुई वो उन्होंने उसको इम्बाइब कर लिया. इसको as simple as that. भाई classical developed the basis, and वहां से जो बेसिक सोच जो पैदा हुई, whatever the basic ideology which developed, that was imbibed by these people. So they became traditional. Imbibing the basic values of the origin of public administration. Positivism को उन्होंने influence accept कर लिया, तो वो traditionals हो गए. Traditional here does not mean backward. वो traditional backward वाले नहीं है. ये traditionals of the evolution or theory or evolution of theoretical evolution of public administration. Okay. Because PubAd's modernization starts from 1900. Other subjects modernization process would have been over by then. But for public administration, इसका modernization कहाँ से शुरू होता है? जब विल्सन आता है तो. इसलिए they are all modern thinkers. They are all the products of industrialization. They are all the products of rationality. So they are not traditional in the methodology, in their orientation. They are not. But yes, because they are inspired by the initial value system, which with reference to the later paradigms can be called as traditional, because it belongs to the primary tradition. It belongs to the original tradition. That is why those people are called traditionals or traditional theories, because later the assumptions modified many times. Okay, evolved. Today we are highly evolved. Okay, so these people, classical theorists, contributed. The classical approach was imbibed by the people who followed it as a tradition, who followed it as the primary value system of the study. ठीक है, they were known as the traditionals. ठीक है, अब इस traditionals में बहुत सारे ऐसे लोग हैं who have contributed. Many people who have contributed to this, which is basically the study of paradigm 2. Okay, that from the structural perspective, okay, the work of Fayol, Gulick, Urwick. Okay. Fayol, Gulick, Urwick, Weber. But these are the most dominant ones. Fayol, Gulick, Urwick, Weber, Mooney, Rayleigh, etc. Okay. Many poor people, but they are the most dominant ones. So they developed under the positivist tradition. They developed the knowledge through the structural perspective. they used a structural approach to develop the knowledge. Okay. Okay, we'll explain. We'll discuss. But first, at least take a reference. What is there? Okay. Some people came with the functional perspective. That means they were more concerned with the study of what were the functions of an organization. What can be the universal functions of the organization? They were more concerned with that. Like one of the most important is the fear. Even though Taylor can be associated with that, but he is associated with something else. So let us be more specific. Functional perspective brought by Fayol. Okay. Economic rational perspective, most of them, Taylor, Fayol, Gulick, Arwick, so on, so many people. Okay. Scientific management, okay, to be considered separately from other kinds of developments, because this was very unique. Okay, and this was one of the initial developments under the traditional model. Okay, scientific management referred to Taylor, Gilbreth, and Gantt. Simon. Scientific management referred to Taylor, Gilbreth, Gantt. उसी में तो रखा हुआ है यार, कहाँ रखा है वो तो? विल्सन वाइट गुडनो सब क्लासिकल है. ठीक है. कौन सी किताब में पढ़ा भाई साइंटिफिक मैनेजमेंट? अच्छा, गेस है तो फिर देन यू आर एग्जेम्प्टेड. ठीक है, नहीं पढ़ के ऐसा मत बोलो. सो टेलर, गिलबर्ट, गैंट एंड सो मेनी अदर पीपल वर देयर. ओके, जो who contributed to scientific management, but yes, Taylor is the primary. Okay. F.W. Taylor. Okay, administrative management or management process school, again Fayol, Gulick, Arwick. Okay, they are credited with that, and so many other people were there. We will study. Okay, but yes, as far as this paradigm 2 is concerned, they were dominant. Okay, but this was the existent model and approaches then. Okay, the dominant aspects of paradigm 2. But along with this dominant, there were some non-dominant aspects which became dominant later. Okay. That means this paradigm or the principles phase does not include them, or they do not contribute to the paradigm of this 2 or paradigm 2 of public administration. But they were so dominant that later, okay, they became the pillars of the paradigm of public administration. So apart from this initial developments during this phase, some other developments were also there, which then did not or were not considered dominant. But as we moved within the same paradigm, as we moved to other phases, those developments became more dominant over the time. Okay. So those can be categorized. Have you written this? Okay. So those developments which later became more dominant conceptually, okay, but they were just emerging then. Okay, somehow they were trying to find their place. Okay, that is, one was the human relations movement. Okay. Also known as the neoclassical. You first try it, don't be confused, I'll explain everything. So neoclassical or the human relations movement, okay, this was also emerging okay, around 1920s, and the contributor was Elton Mayo. And another approach, again same 1920s, late 1920s. The situational approach perspective by M.P. Foley in the same paradigm. Now same paradigm has some dominant conceptual developments and their contradictory forces. Are you understanding this? In the same paradigm, okay, but that is why this paradigm is quite complicated. Okay. And the phase or the time period is also too much, almost 20-25 years. Why? Because various developments took place. Most of the principles and theories of public administration, or for that matter administration, which emerged here, okay, they became the foundation for any other development which took place in public administration later and even today. Variety of concepts, variety of diversity of ideas emerged during this phase. Okay. And there was another person who contributed to this phase, okay, especially here, okay, the challenge. So when the challenge comes in this paradigm, okay, few more developments take place, okay, and they become dominant, because challenge to identity crisis means what? This was the identity, now this identity is no more here. So here some new identity comes, and that person is Simon. So Simon comes with that challenge. Okay. But at least till now, are you clear? Okay. So there was a classical approach, or you can say classical perspective, which dominated the theory building, okay, especially the contribution of these people. Then the classical notion of a science of PubAd, a business perspective of public administration, the positivism to be used in public administration, that traditional notions accepted by these people. They became a kind of tradition for them. It became a kind of ritual for them. It became a kind of law for them. So they were called traditionals. Okay, they followed it like a tradition. They followed it like something like a law, something like a moral and ethical foundation. And that is what these people are called as traditionals. Are you getting? So these traditionals, okay, divided into various perspectives again. Okay. So being a traditional or inspired by the traditional aspects of public administration or classical era, I studied the structure, or somebody studied the structure. That means how the organization to be looks, or sorry, how the organization to look like, how must it be arranged. Now he is more concerned with that. One person concerned with how or what functions are to be performed in an organization. So if I am to develop an organization universally, if I have to study an organization, then I must know what are the functions which are inevitably to be performed in an organization if an organization has to exist. They became functionist. Okay. Economic rational perspective. Okay, that was basically a behavioral aspect. But they never studied the behavior as such. So we use the term the economic rational perspective. Okay, they use this approach to understand the behavior of humans. They said the human beings are economic beings. They are motivated by money, nothing else. So whatever structure you develop, whatever organization you study, your assumption should be that human beings are motivated by money. That means if I have to inspire him, if I have to force him to work harder, I can just pay him little more money. I can use him like a machine if I keep paying him. Are you understanding? Now this was the perspective or assumption behind the understanding of human beings. Okay. So it is duly traditional in nature because humans are not like that. Okay. And that is also the reason for the word traditional, because it had a very elementary notion of the human beings. It never included the study of human beings. It only treated the human beings as an appendage or as an adjunct to the industries or industrial development. Okay. So many people, most of the people came with that. Weber also is part of that. Okay. Scientific management considered separately. Okay. Because its purpose or its perspectives were little different. It was purely concerned with the industrial development, increasing the productivity in the industrial industries. Okay. But this productivity with respect to not the study of organization, but only with respect to the operative level of the organization, the level of the organization which is directly engaged in industries or engaged in machine, using the machine, operating the machine. Shop floor, you can say. Street level bureaucracy, you can say, with your increased understanding. So he was talking about, he was mostly concerned not with the form of organization, not with the study of organization as such, but only with the study of that level of the organization which is directly engaged in the production process. That is why, in spite of being traditional and influenced by the traditional values, he is treated separately, because he is more concerned with the lowest level and not with the entire organization. Okay. So, Taylor and his associates were there who contributed. Administrative management perspective or management process school, now contradictory to this idea. Okay, these people considered management as a process. Process means which includes everything. So they were concerned with the top level, with the middle level, with the lower level. They were concerned with power, authority, rule, regulation, everything that is required to understand and develop an organization. Okay, so they were concerned with the process, not just with certain aspects, not just the structure, not just the function, not just the lowest level, okay, not just the rule, regulation, but they were concerned with the entire process, the entire machinery of the organization. So they were called as the management process theorists. Okay, more concerned with the interlinkage of all the things in the organization. Okay. So we call them as management process theorists. Okay, even though they also were inspired by the same logic. Okay. But you see how the study evolves. Somebody studies this aspect, somebody studies this aspect, somebody studies structure, somebody studies function, then somebody studies the entire thing. Are you getting? So slowly what? This traditional model is also evolving. Okay. Ultimately, okay, there emerges another approach, okay, which contradicts these approaches. In fact, you cannot say it is the criticism of them, but there were certain limitations in these approaches. Okay. So there emerges another approach known as human relations approach. So they were more concerned with the design of the organization. Now that approach is more concerned with the humans of the organization. Understanding organization without human beings. Traditional model. Okay. But improvement over the traditional model is the human relations model, which studies the humans also within the organization. When I say human, I mean certain things. Okay, not only the facts but also values. Not only the procedure but also the attitude. Okay. So we have already done, or we have studied PubAD as behavior. So when we are studying the human relations movement comes, so it changes or it adds upon the existing knowledge or study of public administration. So PubAD from the organizational perspective, PubAD from the instrumental perspective, PubAD from the managerial perspective, POSTCOM all, and then adds to that what? PubAD as the behavior. Are you getting this? So he comes along with many of his associates and he brings the new idea that it must also include the study of human beings. Okay, but it was quite elementary in approach. Okay, it was not very evolved. humans have diverse, you can say, aspects or emotions, attitudes, psychology, various things to be explored. They did not do everything. Only some elementary aspect, but that recognition itself that humans are important aspect to be studied, that itself was revolutionary in nature. Okay. Situational approach, now it was one of the most developed idea during that phase. Okay, around 1920s to 1930s. But this was one of the most, you can say, progressive idea, but it did not become famous. But it evolved chronologically during this paradigm only. Okay. But later we will study paradigm 5 and 6. Now this approach which developed in paradigm 2 was basically in tune or in line with the approaches which developed in paradigm 5 and 6. Okay. So on the timeline it evolved then. But in terms of logic, in terms of idea, it was much ahead of the time. Okay, that is known as the situational approach perspective given by M.P. Follett. Okay. But along with that, okay, there was another person, okay, whom again we can take separately, even though I have mentioned it. Okay. The most dominant one, okay, known as the bureaucratic approach developed by Max Weber. In fact, you can say it is the epitomized, it is the highest form of all these approaches integrated together. Not this one. Okay, but all the traditional classical approaches integrated into one. That is the bureaucratic approach given by Max Weber. And that is why Weber is probably the most dominant theorist, okay, during this paradigm, and not only during this paradigm, throughout the entire study of public administration. The entire study of public administration revolves around Weber. Okay, because he conceived all the good aspects, all the best ideal aspects of all these theories into one theory. Have you understood this much? यहाँ तक समझ में आया? ठीक है, याद नहीं होगा, but you must try to remember it tomorrow. Okay. Don't memorize it, but at least logically you link it. Okay, names you have to memorize. There are so many other names, that is why I have not given all of them together. At least you can memorize these names by tomorrow, can you? Okay, so I'll start the class with the revision of this. Okay, so this paradigm 2, the principles phase or stage, okay, includes these developments. Okay. Now one by one we'll study. Obviously they are very elaborate in nature, so don't be confused. कि कहाँ से शुरू किया, कहाँ खत्म हुआ है ना? So that is why I gave you already a structure. So don't be confused. In paradigm 1, we are studying a particular phase. Okay, this phase includes these developments. Is it clear? Any doubt you have?